to another edition of Gas. I am Gresh. He is Jason Anik.
You were playing everybody and we're winning the game last night.
The head coach is fighting people on the sidelines.
What do you got for me?
I know you're a part of Tight Pants Society.
No fucking play is that a gimme, right?
All right, folks, here we go on another edition of Gas. And Jason Anik is at the secret UFC White House planning meetings today. No Bill Belichick in the background, no Carolina Blue. But, boy, we have a lot to talk about. And even though for me in the national sports talk world, it is a bit of a dead time of year, Jay, Boston sports has got a lot to talk about.
Always a lot to talk about. Good to be with you as always. You know, I want to start. I wasn't even intending to do this, but the Nathan's hot dog eating contest, right? So for whatever reason, maybe it's because you texted me, Gresh, morning of saying that you bet on the over 65.5 hot dogs for Joey Chestnut. Maybe that's what moved the needle for me. But I watched it like start to finish in a way that I've never watched it before. The introductions are great, obviously. What's that guy's name? What's the guy's name?
The color commentator is Rich Shea, and the guy who does the announcements is his brother George.
Okay, I love that you knew the names, but so I was so appalled and like disgusted watching this thing, you know. And I think the brother George, who does the voiceovers, who's great. I think he said he tried to do this at one point and he compete and he was competing against a journalist. And I think he ate like 6 hot dogs. And then he was like, the flavor just becomes a problem. Like delicious, but the flavor becomes a problem. I just don't, it's repulsive. Like people talking about it like a sport, like give me a break. And so I just wanted to start there. I don't know why.
Well, it's really funny when George Shea like really gets into it. And it's the you know what's funny is I got an email from him when they announced Joey Chestnut has come back. I have his number here in my phone. I went and looked it up because I'm like, I know this guy. But when he does the Chestnut one from atop of Hot Dog Mount Olympus, this man has slid down the hill of greatness just like the hot dogs slide down his gullet. It really is fabulous, and there's no one that can do that. Like, you can't take anybody with a silver voice who could really do that. Like, the Buffers couldn't pull that. I mean, they could pull it off in their own way, but there is something very carny about it when George Shea does it and the hat on and everything.
Yes.
It is if aliens came down and said, show us Americana, you would take them to Coney Island for that hot dog eating contest.
Well, no, he's brilliant on the mic, and obviously experience, he's gotten better and better. But for a guy like me, watching a guy like that, pause and go slow and just marinate on the whole thing. But I just can't watch these guys with mouth full of soggy buns.
It's awful.
I can't do it anymore, and I don't even know why I went there out of the gate. You know why I went there out of the gate? Because this term glizzy that I know you hate for hot dog.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't like it either, but what is this term? I think
do you know, I did research on this because I got hot about it on the radio the other day. And I yelled at one of my kids' friends. So on July 4th, my youngest had like a small gathering of his friends come over, most of them that I knew and stuff like that. So we had the fire going and they started making hot dogs. And one of the kids looked at me and goes, "Do you want a glizzy?" And I told him, "Get the fuck out of my house." And the kid laughed and I was like, "I hate that word. It's so stupid." And he was like, so I got set up. They set the kid up for me to like cut a promo on him and all that. And, but it comes from a rap term from Snoop. A glizzy is really a name for a Glock. And now all of these, I guess, Gen Zs, I guess it would be, are trying to appropriate it to mean a hot dog.
Our boy Emerson at DraftKings, who I love, by the way, he loves the term glizzy. Does he?
Yeah, I know. I was ripping him. We were going back and forth on Twitter on the 4th of July. I basically called him a commie.
So I I haven't eaten a hot dog in a long time. I don't know if I talked about it this show, but I saw an image of a hot dog under a microscope. Don't do that if you want to keep eating hot dogs. And yeah, Brady Quinn, former NFL collegiate quarterback, doesn't eat hot dogs anymore. So I'm on that train. But after watching the hot dog eating contest, and I don't know, it made me want to eat hot dogs again, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I haven't had one this summer, and there's a brand of them in Rhode Island that are very well known in terms of the hot dog world regionally, right? It would be like going to get an awful or a quibble or something like that. But this
what's an awful or a quibble?
Wait, an awful is at Newport Creamery, where they have, it's like their version of the milkshake. And the whole trick of it is, I used to work there. The whole gimmick of it is, if you use ice cream, that's technically called a cabinet. A milkshake is really milk and syrup, but most people call a milkshake with the ice cream in it, right? Yes. But if you're to get technical about it, there's the milkshake, there's the cabinet, which is with ice cream, and then the awful is with ice milk. But you just blend it all together. They're unbelievable. They're
what's
crazy
this brand
good.
Of hot dogs in Rhode
Island. You know what? Of course, I'm spacing on it.
Oh, sorry, I put you on the spot.
No. It's just all.
Not Oscar Maye.
No. It isn't. Hold on, that's wrong. Have you ever had a computer keyboard go bad on you?
I have.
And I have that right now. I have to cut and paste A's.
Well, no, it's move on to sports, right?
It's yeah. Let's head to the Red Sox, who are they up or down this week? It really feels like week to week that this team is just riding the wave. Is it? Oh, it just came to me. Soggy Dogs, SAUGYS. You can order them. Dude, they snap. I'm talking about, they really snap. No, yes. They're that kind of good.
Soggy, but not from Saugus.
No, not from Saugus. No, I think it's either Bristol or Warren, Rhode Island, one of the two.
All right.
So the Red Sox are playing well this week. They're 2 games over 500. They are still 4th in the American League East because the freaking Blue Jays have won 9 in a row, and they've finally gotten hot. I know that you sent a thing in our text string of the Youngs listening to little Breggy in the dugout. I'm so I can't take the ride with this team anymore. It's not even a roller coaster fun. It feels like extreme highs where they've won 4 in a row, or extreme lows where they lose a series and you think, good Lord, could this team get any worse?
Didn't they finish exactly 81-81 last season?
I do believe.
It really feels as though it possibly is heading towards that. I hope it is not heading towards that. But before we talk about the baseball team from Boston, the Blue Jays, right? 15 games over 500 after that 9-game winning streak that you alluded to, right? Excuse me. Their run differential plus 16. Only plus 16, 15 games over 500. So Red Sox now 6.5 games back at 47-45. Yankees just on Sunday broke a 6-game losing streak, which is just music for Boston fans. So they're at 49-41, I believe, 8 games over. So yeah, I'm interested, man. And in terms of Bregman, right? More rumblings about the contract, but most importantly, he's actually considering coming back this weekend ahead of the All-Star break. I will say, with an injury like this, I guess when you're ready, you're ready. But for me, no need to bring him back this weekend. Let's just go after the All-Star break. Little extra juice, I don't mind. He missed 58 games with a similar injury with Houston in 2021, only missed 40 so far with the Red Sox this year.
And Jay, you've heard this phrase before. Sometimes you have to save the athlete from themselves. And maybe this is one of those deals where you hate to use another cliche here, but an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Let's wait if it means another week or so, or getting him back in the middle of July, then let the guy rest. Let him, you know what it is? He made the All-Star team. So I think there might be a little bit of, as long as I can get back from my team before the All-Star game, then I can go participate in it.
He's not just kind of, he said he'll go to the All-Star break, but only maybe to watch the Derby with his son. He's not going to play in the All-Star break. I tell you what, I don't know if I'd sign him to a new contract if he's going to play in the All-Star. He doesn't need to play in the All-Star game with a quad injury.
No, so I would completely agree. No one cares about the All-Star game anymore, sadly.
But ultimately, the Red Sox signing Bregman is obviously a very different conversation than where the Red Sox are right now in terms of this season, right? In terms of them signing Bregman, we addressed that last week to some extent. I certainly hope it happens. I think if you're going to have any leverage, it's going to be now. But this team, right, while you say the follow of this team has been frustrating, gosh, they're keeping me interested, and like Lucas Giolito, I can't even believe I'm doing this. Last 5 starts, teams 4-1, 32 in a third inning, 31 strikeouts, 0.83 ERA. And he's not your ace. I think he had over 200 strikeouts in 2023 between 3 teams. Is good work that year was with the White Sox. But, if he wants to sort of settle in and become a solid number 2 starter, a guy where you're actually looking forward to his starts, this team could start to do something. Aroldis Chapman going back to the All-Star game, deservedly. So I'm excited. But to your point, it is so week to week that 7 days from now, it could be a whole different tune.
Yeah, you could feel completely different about this team. I mean, there were the jokes going around the internet that when you lose, you get swept by the Red Sox, you get fired because they broomed everybody in Washington after the Red Sox went down there and swept in the nation's capital. Giolito, as the tweet says, he has been cooking, no question. And this is a part of the group, Jay, that Craig Breslow took a chance on, of these guys who had elbow injuries or guys that were coming back from something. Giolito's another one of those guys where it was, okay, we'll sign him for 2 years, knowing that if we get him for the second one, then you're the leader in the clubhouse to get him for a third year. You just got to wait out the rehab and that kind of stuff. And there's lots of guys on the Red Sox roster and in the organization that are like that. But they really need some consistency, I think, from Trevor Story as well. Like he's 17 homers?
He's been on
an
absolute tear. I mean,
he's been on it. No, but that's the thing. He's been on a tear, but it's taken him forever to get there. They need someone like Devers who was at least semi-consistent. And I don't know if you saw the latest on Devers. They apparently the Giants asked him to work out at first base with Will Clark, and he didn't show up.
Oh, that's unbelievable. But what's so funny, and I want you to talk more about that, but the reason I'm so glad that I haven't heard the latest on Rafael Devers, because I don't need to anymore, because he doesn't play for the baseball team that I root for.
Right.
So really he had a meeting with Will Clark and he didn't show up.
Yeah. Will Fleming, one of the Red Sox broadcasters, told the story. Now, his brother works in the Giants organization. So his brother, I don't know if maybe Will stepped out of line and told him this story or whatever. I don't know. But he told the story of, apparently they asked him to work out with Will Clark and Devers didn't show up, which is, knowing Will Clark, and if you've ever heard any interviews with him, I'm sure Will might have handled it himself and, walked up to him and cussed him out face to face.
Well, you talked a lot about David Ortiz in spring training and if he could perhaps have an impact on Rafael Devers. And if David Ortiz doesn't care for Rafael Devers, right? That might be the only person on the planet David Ortiz doesn't care for that hadn't worn pinstripes, Mm-hmm. Ortiz is beloved and loves everybody. So if he couldn't connect with this guy, it just is what it is. Like, let me know when the Giants are in the postseason. Maybe I'll tune in. But the guy the Red Sox need to come back in the lineup is Alex Bregman. And I think Roman Anthony, first Fenway bomb yesterday, 418 feet, straightaway center. I'm fired up here on a Tuesday, Gresh.
Well, and you know what? It'll be the kids that will, I think, bring people in. If the group of kids all start playing well, or Kyle Harrison is coming up, part of that Giants trade. It'll be if there's new blood, let's say, who really start to take over, like Roman Anthony and people like that. Then I think you'll start to see some buy-in from Red Sox fans. Because it isn't going to be, this guy could leave or this guy's just a dink. Like, whenever they lost Betts, they ran out and signed Devers. And we found out that was probably not the personality that you want to invest in. So you have to be personality aware. But in terms of calming the fan base, if the youngs come up and they start playing well, then for the first time in what, Jay, how long, you would really feel like you can invest in this team and you know the core isn't going to go anywhere for a couple of years.
A lot of different ways to win championships, to get in the dance, right? Perhaps Walker Buehler could figure some things out. But I think getting Bregman back and building around him as a fan would keep me very interested.
Yeah, the other thing that I learned this week is just how good the Detroit Tigers are, 58-34. You know what I always look for validation on teams with winning records? I don't know how you go about this, but for me, I look at what they do on the road. Like for me, even though Tampa is in the middle of the American League East, they're the best team in my opinion. They got a winning record at home, but they win on the road. And you look at the Tigers, 27-20 away from home right now. That's why they're 58-34 and have the best record in baseball. Record-wise, they're better than the Dodgers, but I still feel like the Dodgers kind of have another level in them where this might be the best Detroit is playing, and they got to maintain that level for when the Dodgers kind of kick in like a turbo booster.
Very well put. It's really, Red Sox can absolutely rake even without Devers. Just really going to be interesting to see what the next couple weeks yield. If they play some good baseball, they absolutely, I think, are going to be buyers ahead of the deadline.
I think they're going to add. Whether we're going to look at it as are they buyers, I think might be a different story. Does that make sense?
It does. And I do think perhaps how they play over the next couple of weeks could dictate some how aggressive they may be, because look with the Toronto Blue Jays, a whole different conversation than they're having 3 weeks ago.
No question. And that's the thing about baseball is you get the streak, and then does the streak lead to consistency or does it lead to more streakiness? Like that's the frustrating part of kind of following these Red Sox is that it's just more and more streakiness and things like that. But I'm glad it's kind of calmed down enough to where people aren't hooting on Cora, because you and I agree he's not the problem.
Oh, I thought that was another one of your phrases, hooting on Cora. I was like, oh, what is a hooting on Cora? But hooting on the manager, Alex Cora.
Yeah.
I got to be ready for those.
No, I know. It's Shaughnessy said it once on my show, hooting on the Newfies, and it just got all over me. So it became a part of the just the nomenclature, I guess I would say. We find out officially in the NBA that Tyrese Haliburton will not be back next year. We figured with the timing of his injury that it was likely that that's the way it was going to be. And there's video of JT out there, in the pool, kind of moving around a little bit. I'm feeling pretty good about Jason Tatum's rehab. But you know what? I think, Jay, very sneakily, right? Very quietly, Brad Stevens has still kept together enough of a roster that this should still be a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference, right?
I agree. As soon as Tatum got injured, I maybe was a little ahead of myself, but I said that, if he does rehabilitate well at 27, 28 years old, it's not out of the realm that he could absolutely be playing in games, a month or a month and a half prior to the postseason beginning. We know that Kobe Bryant at age 35 came back in 8 months. I'm not suggesting that was good necessarily, but it is really interesting how even the timelines for Haliburton and Tatum are very different, right? The Haliburton component, it makes a ton of sense in terms of holding out, right? Typically it's about a year. It happens in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. But for Jason Tatum, I really think there's a great chance he comes back. And yeah, can the Celtics contend if Jason Tatum is back? I think most certainly the Eastern Conference in a way feels very sort of above average across the board with no great teams. And
no, that's a good call. I like the way you said that. It's kind of here, and maybe Cleveland is the one team that can kick up a little bit. I didn't ask you your thoughts on Lonzo Ball going to Cleveland.
I like when a player like that gets to go into a situation where he doesn't necessarily have to be the guy or even one of the guys, right? And even if you look at DeAndre Ayton going to the Lakers, right? Yeah, there's some rumblings. Maybe he's not the best locker room guy, shows up late, different things, but he's not getting some max contract from the Lakers, right? So hopefully they can get the best out of him. But no, I like the move for Lonzo Ball. What I will say is, as we talk about Eastern Conference contenders, I like the move for Myles Turner a lot more than most for the Milwaukee Bucks. I could get into that in detail, and I will because your microphone's away from your face, but I really like this move. And when you have a conference that we believe is sort of up in the air, Indianapolis, you go from Game 7 of the NBA Finals to I hate to say it, a complete non-contender next year. They really are not a contending team now, the Indiana Pacers. That's got to be a tough swallow for that fan base. But to take a guy like Myles Turner, I like the mojo, right? He has that dog in him. He looks like he's a winner out there, right? I think shot 40% over three from 3-point range in the regular season. So him with Giannis, I like that quite a bit, actually. Your thoughts on Myles Turner with Milwaukee?
I think it's a weird way of trying to keep Giannis happy because I don't know if there's necessarily the fit. It kind of felt like this was the move you make to secure an inside presence if you do something with Giannis or decide to move on from him. But Jay, I would say that I really don't think Giannis is going anywhere. I don't know how paranoid that organization is or should be. I don't quite get the fit. At first, honestly, Jay, I thought, wow, maybe something's cooking with Giannis, and this is the first move in terms of him maybe getting out of there. But no, it seems like they want to try to pair those two. I think if you have the inside presence, then it allows Giannis to play with his face to the basket or, to play more on the wing. So I do kind of get it from that standpoint. But how about Indiana, where before Game 7, it came out that, okay, we'll be taxpayers, we'll be okay. And then Haliburton gets hurt, and then they say, F it, let Turner get the hell out of here, So they go, and I understand, but that's a real, like you mentioned, that's a real kick to the nards of Pacers fans. Those are good basketball fans out there. And right when you think you've got it, it literally gets ripped away from you. And then next year you're going to go, oh, who's going to be our big guy now that Haliburton's back?
Well, and it being ripped away from you, right? For Celtics fans, seeing Jason Tatum tear his Achilles tendon, there's a fresh banner hanging in the Garden, right? The Indiana doesn't have that. So for Celtics fans, right? Yeah, stuff happens, but a championship also happened, right? But I really think for Myles Turner, it's almost like a younger, better Brook Lopez who's no longer there, right? And they played some really good basketball when you had that big that can stretch the floor, but also have a presence and be a shot blocker down low. And I really like how, I know I'm moving back to Milwaukee a little bit because I really think Indiana's just fudged and I feel bad for the organization.
Yeah.
But in terms of Damian Lillard, kind of think it was a kind of a good proactive move for Milwaukee, despite having to pay that, $22 million dead cap money for 5 straight years.
Yeah. And the guy from Indiana, the Kevin Pritchard, who is the president, said that Turner's agent never gave them a chance to match Milwaukee's offer. So maybe that screams that Myles Turner wanted to get the heck out of there. But look, at the end of the day, business is business in the NBA. You go get your guy $110 million. You don't necessarily turn around to find a way to screw that up, if you know what I mean.
Well, I hear you. And I actually, this may sound crazy, but I think Myles Turner's more valuable, it's certainly next season, to Milwaukee than he is in Indianapolis. I think it also, that injury, it really does flip the way the NBA is constructed right now. That type of injury that takes you out for the existing season and the following one, it just flips the whole script. So now, I go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you and I have done a lot here on Myles Turner, but maybe we kind of buried the lead a little bit. The reason this happened is because money was freed up because Milwaukee decided to take Dame Lillard and spread out his money hit. So for the next 5 years, Dame Lillard will cost $22 million a year on the Milwaukee salary cap for them to just ship him into the sweet good night. And Jay, there's a ton of rumblings out there that one of the 3 teams that Lillard is interested in is the Boston Celtics.
And his timeline, he's older than Jason Tatum, but his timeline should be somewhat sooner, right? Injured it a few weeks prior.
Yes.
Or months, actually. So, that's interesting to me. the dollars, right? What are the dollars going to be for Damian Lillard, right? Is it not
well, I kind of feel like DeAndre Ayton like went to the Lakers and got 2 years at 18 million, so say 9 million a year, but he's also getting his buyout money from Portland.
Right.
So knowing that Dame's getting the buyout money of the 22 million, if you figure the same thing, can you find a way to give him a 2 for 18? Or does he go to, Golden State or Houston? That's the thing about Damian Lillard is that he's going to get a chance to really pick or cherry pick what team he might give a big friendly discount to for a year and then jack up the number in year 2. So if you're Brad Stevens, who are your, Tatum and Brown are your big recruiters, and Tatum and Lillard have that sort of kinship of fighting back from the same injury. So you hope your superstar now has the ability to pull someone in, and whatever you can scrape together in the moment. I don't think Damian Lillard is going to look at a contender and say, well, God damn it, you better give me $50 million to come here. No, he's not that kind of guy, and the situation won't call for it. That's why I think Boston is very much in play, because Damian Lillard might look at it, Jay, and say, do I want to go to Houston and fight all the teams in the West, or do I want to go to Boston and fight all the teams in the East, including maybe beating Milwaukee along the way?
Well, yeah, and also, do you want to play with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum or Kevin Durant, right? And, in terms of Damian Lillard, I do think he'd be a terrific fit with Brown and Tatum. In a way, maybe what they were hoping with Kemba Walker. I know Kemba Walker is not the player that Lillard is by any stretch and was banged up late in his career, but, that sort of star point guard, right? Even Kyrie Irving, Kyrie Irving had just stuck around with these two guys. I still think that fit was tremendous. But I don't know. We'll see on Damian Lillard. I love what I'm seeing from Jason Tatum in terms of like, I like the energy. I like what he's putting out there in terms of wanting to get back. I think there's some, it's going to shock me if he doesn't play competitive basketball next season.
No, I'm with you. There'd have to be a setback, and maybe that's the allure for someone like Damian Lillard. Knowing that Tatum is going to make it back.
One more thing I want to say before you
please.
move on to football quickly. If we do think Cleveland Cavaliers are the class of the Eastern Conference, I like the Myles Turner move even more. We know Cleveland's big with Mobley and the other, so I think ultimately, if that's the team you're sort of looking at, I think we could be looking at this as a very, very good move if we fast forward 10 months from now.
Yeah, and I'm sure Cleveland is happy that the Indiana roster is shaken up so they don't lose to them again, as they have in the playoffs 2 years in a row. On to football. We will have a preseason game in the books by the end of this month, folks. So it's a coming. But an unnamed Patriots source from inside the team dropped a little update on Drake Maye this week, saying the 22-year-old, quote, looks like an NFL quarterback now. That is via ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. The floor is yours.
Well, for me, and Jeremy Fowler knows a lot more than I do, but Maye looked to me like an NFL quarterback the second I saw him play in the NFL, right? And I don't mean being ready to be a sort of guy or the guy quite yet, but you could tell right away that he had everything there is. Look how thick his legs are, by the way. I like it. But look at all the dudes, right? Stephon Diggs looks like he's in better shape than anyone there. But no, I mean, I was hoping that you would see a sort of an older looking dude, right? And a dude who just sort of more looks the part, if you will. And I'm sure that's what some Fowler's alluding to, but this doesn't surprise me at all. I couldn't be more bullish on this team. And when I tend to be a guy, especially for the Boston teams, where I play devil's advocate, or it's a happiness hedge, where I'm saying, oh, I don't know, I couldn't be more bullish and more optimistic every time we talk about anything related to the Patriots. So to me, hearing this about Drake Maye, it doesn't surprise me at all. I'm so excited, bro. Like, I cannot wait to see what they're able to do. I think it's going to look like a whole different, it's almost going to look like an expansion team in a way,
Well, the one thing I'll say about that Jeremy Fowler nugget is it's no surprise considering he's now with Josh McDaniels, who knows how to groom and get quarterbacks ready. And, you see that there's the quote from Jeremy Fowler. Now everything is calm and collected, looks composed, so they are ready for a year 2 jump. They feel they have more around him now. But what they really have is proper coaching. And you can learn, and we saw last year, you could see players decline or really more not grow is really what it is. Growth was stagnated last year, and they were able to figure it out before it became cancerous, let's say. And now Drake Maye definitely has a chance. We know he has all the skills. There are two things that are going to separate Drake Maye, and it's not going to be his arm talent. It's going to be how quick can they smarten him up to the NFL game, and can he lead? Because we still don't know that. All those wide receivers, you know why they love the quarterback? Because they throw him the ball. But do people in the huddle believe they've really got a guy? Like, do the offensive linemen, when they put their hand in the dirt, do they really believe they have a guy? Do the wide receivers really believe they have somebody that can not only get them the ball, but not get them killed at the same time?
100%.
Stuff like that. Yeah. And that's that to me is the biggest sort of question. No shock there. I think Drake Maye's been with his now wife since like high school or something.
Good. I love it. Give me all of that. What I will say about Tom Brady, and I was watching some documentary on the 2003 New England Patriots a couple days back. But yes, Tom Brady inspired such confidence, having of his other teammates having nothing to do with the physical tools, just like you talk about. It's all about that dude in the huddle. If you're down a couple scores late or whatever the situation may be, Cody, retired Brady can't be stopped. That's fine. But no, Brady inspired that type of confidence. And I do believe your point is very well taken. That's what they're going to need from Drake Maye, is to the point where he can have that sort of Joe Burrow component where you walk into the huddle,
I like that.
And it's just this command of the mental side of things. And I'm confident that he's going to be able to do that, but he's still a baby. He really is. So I'm excited though.
That's the thing. We forget that this is a 23-year-old who's still finding himself, let alone being somebody who can lead people. And, thank God the infection of last year didn't last long. At least it seems like right now with Drake Maye. Training camp's right around the corner. We're probably due to go through the roster at some point and just see who are some of the guys that are involved in battles. Like, is Kayshon Boutte making this roster next year? Now with this wide receiver depth, you start to look at who's going to be 4, 5, and 6. Because remember, the 6th wide receiver was almost always Matt Slater, and he was a part of that wide receiver group. So are they keeping 5? Are they keeping 6? Some different makeup to that room this year.
Well, no doubt. And some guys that probably were the opposite of set up for success, set up to fail every stretch of the road. So, you talk about sort of competent and professional coaching. You could argue that they went perhaps from like the worst coaching situation in the NFL to arguably one of the best.
Correct.
And that component, I think, in this league can't be overstated.
Well, and it's going to affect other teams because the defensive coordinator, Tyrell Williams, they got him. That chews up the depth of the coaching in Detroit, because Detroit loses both coordinators. Then they lose their D-line coach, who had been a D coordinator before. That might have been the guy who would have gotten the elevation in Detroit. Now you've taken away Aaron Glenn. You've taken away Williams, who's now the Patriots defensive coordinator. So you're also chipping away and making it harder for teams at other outposts to maintain their level of consistency. And we remember what it was like when Crennel and Weiss left. Even though it was people from within, it was still a transition because those coordinators put their stamps on each side of the ball, and that does take some time. I think the guy, you see the depth chart right there, and they got Pop Douglas in right now as the slot guy. I think people are going to be googly-eyed over Kyle Williams, but I think the guy who's going to emerge at training camp is Pop Douglas. I think, from what I've heard from the inside, they want to find ways to get him the football and be a playmaker, and not that he's Edelman or Welker, but I think there's a little bit of using him in that role. From what I've heard, they really like Pop Douglas up there, and I think they can get some things done with him.
I'm thrilled to hear that, albeit surprised. If I'm not mistaken, I think, didn't McDaniels, maybe we had heard rumblings that he thought Pop was a little small. Am I making that up?
No, I definitely think so. But I think they've embraced. But I think
Good.
they've embraced him because you know what he is. He's the. There's a reason like Belichick drafted him. You know, he's got that profile that will fit well with those coaches under Mike Vrabel.
So I wonder, is the ceiling so much higher on Ladd McConkey, who the Patriots passed on last year at number 39, than Pop Douglas, for example, right? I just feel like there's so much unknown, right? If Pop Douglas was on the Chargers last year in that role, now I'm not trying to, that just popped into my head.
No,
right
I
now.
hear what you're
You feel
saying,
me,
but
right? It's like a lot of these guys. Can you imagine? You know, what is Alex Van Pelt, what is he doing for the development of some of these receivers last year, you know?
yeah, I think it was all about the draft picks that year. It was about Polk, and then Baker never ended up doing anything at the end of the day. So I think it became about them because remember, who's the general manager that also, you know, signed off on hiring him? It's the guy who went out and spent a high-level draft pick. And you know what's crazy, Jay? I'm hearing nothing about Jalen Polk.
Yeah.
Nothing. That's pretty scary that a high second round pick who now no longer has a guaranteed roster spot. There is no more sanctity for him. He's now got to go out and really earn it and compete. And that group of Pop, Williams, Booty, guys like that, those guys are going to be fighting for likely one spot on a roster. And does Drake May have some kind of connection with one of those guys that when you put them in a more well-run offense, it might show up? Like, you know, like does Drake May on the practice field, can him and Kayshon Boutte really cook? And we never saw it in a game. But you put it in a different offense with a different set of eyes, and now you've got the ability to showcase that at the next level, and maybe that does help one of those guys stick around where another one ends up getting cut.
I think the world of Chris Sims, and he thought the world of Kyle Williams prior to this draft. It's going to shock me if that pick doesn't hit with flying colors.
Right, and that's, you know, and I guess the only cautionary tale would be, look at what we just talked about. You know, last year, a lot of people like Jalen Polk.
Yeah, who picked him, though, you know?
Oh, well, there is that. That's very true. And then it's how are you used? And, you know, last year, Polk showed a lot of nice things. Like, I don't think I think he's making the team, quite honestly. Because I think a wide receiver that is okay with blocking, that's going to be one of the things that's going to ingratiate him with this coaching staff, is that Polk was a dude who was willing to do the little things. And I think if you're a high talented player who maybe hasn't figured it out, but you're willing to do little things, that buys you time in the NFL, I think.
Great stuff. I agree.
This will, I got to ask you a question because I've got a noon to 3 on Mad Dog Sports Radio right after this. And here's what I'm asking America. And it's a little bit of poking at Dion, I understand. Who's more likely to end up in the college football playoff? Bill Belichick or Deion Sanders?
Well, I wish that I could lie and tell you Bill Belichick, but I think it's Deion Sanders. I just do.
Wow, I'm a little surprised to hear you say that.
So, a couple of preseason rankings for you. This one from CBS Sports has Colorado at number 24. I think that's too high. North Carolina at number 62 overall. I think that may be high. In terms of schedules, right? Colorado has the 19th hardest schedule in FBS, right? Which does impact it. North Carolina, we've looked at their schedule. Looks like a lot of winnable games. The 65th hardest schedule out of the 136 teams in the FBS. So while North Carolina's schedule is easier, I still go Colorado every day of the week. I think what they've built over the last couple of years, I'm sure they're going to have more talent walking through that door. So I'll vote for Deion Sanders, and I will root for Bill Belichick.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I'm Team Bill on this one. I don't respect Deion as a coach. Do you remember? I don't know if I brought this up to you, and if I did, put up the stop sign. Do you remember the basketball player O.J. Mayo, who went to USC?
Yeah.
And played in the NBA. Yep. Okay. So O.J. Mayo got involved with Master P's kid, right? They were like high school teammates or whatever. So when OJ Mayo was ready to commit to USC, Master P was the one who made the call and said, yeah, they're ready to commit, and like attached his kid like an amoeba to the star of OJ Mayo. I'm now fully convinced that's what Dion did with Shadir Sanders and Travis Hunter. He attached his son like an amoeba to the guy that was really talented, and that's how, in part, Dion got his way to Colorado. I just don't think the guy can coach. I think coaches have left, and they've been like, thank God I got out of there without my hair being on fire. I just think there will be something that I think Bill Belichick will remind people that coaching really does still truly matter, especially nowadays where everybody is now capped in terms of what you can offer people. Like, everybody made a big deal about this tackle who cut like a $5 million deal with Texas Tech before the new legislation went into effect. So he was like the last kid who ended up getting big bucks. And even at Big 12 Media Day today, Matt Campbell, the head coach of Iowa State, Jay, says, yeah, our top 20 guys took pay cuts to stay here. What world of college sports are we living in? Good grief.
Which is unbelievable, the world of, when you talk about the NBA in terms of the different guys, right? Banchero, right? Orlando
yeah,
Magic.
$287 million, I think. Yeah,
I think it was
in
239,
Florida.
that rookie max. But either way,
yeah, tax-free.
And he's great. You know what I mean? And that's
a
home run draft pick. But it is unbelievable how quickly they get to these max extensions. I know time goes by more quickly as we get older, but man, feels like he just entered the league.
No, very true. Hey, I know we're running tight because I got to go run to do Sirius XM, but what's your vibe on the UFC actually holding an event at the White House next year?
July 4th, 2026 is a Saturday night. At this point, it'll shock me if the UFC is not holding an event at the White House. I could get into all sorts of political avenues on this, but I'm just not going to. My brother John has been working for the UFC 15 years plus, been talking about Donald Trump's sort of love for MMA, and Donald Trump sitting home watching some of these fight nights, right? Even when he's not in the building. So I think he legitimately likes the UFC. You can be sure he legitimately has a friendship with Dana White, and they like shaking things up. Dana White likes shaking things up. You can be sure that Donald Trump likes shaking things up. So I think there's a great chance that it happens. And unless I'm mistaken, it literally seems to have moved John Jones, the needle for John Jones, to the point where now it's
really? Oh, the great one from, now I'm going into my George Shea. The great one, legend great one from upon Fight Mountain High. He is now decided to come out once again for maybe a big paycheck and to potentially back out or have another fight ruined. He is the alleged greatest ever, John Jones. Yeah, because I always take issue with some of the John Jones narrative that's out there. But anyway, more likely to fight at the White House, Conor McGregor or John Jones?
John Jones for me. But I honestly, as a betting man, I think there's a decent chance that they both fight there. Time goes by fast, right? We're less than a year out for John Jones to be ready to fight Aspinall or whoever it is, right? Maybe Aspinall fights once and then he defends it against John Jones. Like, I'd be surprised if it doesn't happen. Conor McGregor, it's going to surprise me if he ever makes the walk again.
Agreed.
Whether it's at the White House or not. And say what you want about John Jones, but it just kind of is what it is. The fans that think this guy has let them down, I know you're starving, but I don't think John Jones owes the fans anything. And I know there are some of us that might be on Jones Island. He is the owner of Dirty Boxing. Represent. But for me, it just kind of is what it is. And this moved the needle. I bet Dana White's thinking to himself, gosh, man, I wish that we had thought about this. Maybe we would have moved. Maybe we'd be fighting at the White House this December. But either way, I think there's a great chance that it happens. And I'm along for the entertainment ride.
Look, by the way, I love Dirty Boxing too. I like the concept of it all. And my sort of mocking of the whole John Jones thing is the way that people just automatically drop trow and run naked through the quad anytime his name gets brought up in any sort of fight discussion. And I just think there's layers there. And I think John Jones is aware of that too, eminently. I mean, he's fought through he's had to, confront these things head on and face demons in his life.
No doubt. And we could focus on all the, out of the cage stuff or whatever it is. But what I choose to focus on is what interests me, which is him pulling up the garage door to his gym with the crochet boss, Maurice Green, right behind him with, spider webs on the outside of it. Jones talked a lot about having not worked out at all, since his fight at the end of last year. So for me, as a fan, right, we said when he retired, we thought we were going to see him again. So a couple weeks later, back in the testing pool, to me, it puts a smile on my face. It is what it is. I'm not part of the fellowship of the miserable when it comes down to John Jones.
Yeah, I'd love to see the guy actually fight Aspinall. It would shock me if he does, because I think there is a little bit of, listen, John Jones is not stupid. He also knows he's 38 years old, and while he may be great, there are lines to greatness that even the greats know. Like Tom Brady talked about how he had to work harder in the last 5 years of his career in the offseason to maintain that level. And, no one beats Father Time, especially in UFC. We know how those, when a fighter's 5 years and older, we know how those fights start to go. So the clock still is ticking on John Jones a little bit. I think, Jay, the big thing for me, even though I sort of mocked a little bit, is that you're bullish on this White House thing is going to happen. This isn't one of those, pipe dreams or something that just got kind of burped out of thin air. And that's what excites me, because my God, what a unique look it could be. Has UFC ever run a straight outdoor show? Or will they be borrowing the big cover from WWE that they use for those PLEs in massive NFL stadiums?
Well, if Riyadh season is behind it, the budget will be, limitless to some extent, right? Look what they did at Sphere. And when Dana White was talking about this Canelo Crawford boxing match on September 13th, which is going to be at Allegiant Stadium in Vegas, the Raiders Stadium, Dana said, I don't like fighting in stadiums. He's like, but you can be sure we will make it work. So I'll be anxious to see what they do in September in Vegas. I think that may be a precursor to maybe what they can do.
Interesting. Good. Yeah, it'll be, because I'd be very interested to see that. And wow, the security clearances for that. Holy cow.
Well, and I can speak to that a little bit. Donald Trump comes to a lot of these events. You can be sure there is a different level of communication for those of us that'll be sitting on the floor. But yeah, I can't even imagine, right? I'm not sure my UFC credential is going to work too well in DC.
Yeah, that'll be a tough one. And will it be like a crush of people lined up on the outside fence? To grab the rail fence there and press your face up against it to be able to see. It'd be pretty interesting how they shake that out.
I'm telling you, these UFC fights are like Republican national conventions anyway nowadays, right? So you can be sure
they
these
are.
VIP guests, right, that are greeting Trump, I'm sure they'll be extended an invitation.
AOC, I'm sure, won't be there. 15 years ago, LeBron made the decision. Does it feel like it was that long ago for this guy?
Yep. I'm old. Yeah, absolutely. And I bet LeBron feels the same way. So yeah, me at freshly turned 47 years of age, yes, it feels like 15 years ago. And what I'll say is I had just moved down to the South Beach area fairly recently. So that took my sort of team hatred, that put the Heat in a very high, you root against your sort of rivals, and the Celtics and the Heat developed a rivalry, and I'm living down here in Miami. So yeah, you can be sure.
You're proof that you're in a way proof that LeBron was the rival for Boston fans for a period of time. Because even when he went to Miami, it was still, that guy. Like if Jeter had gotten traded from the Yankees and went to the Blue Jays, it wouldn't be F the Blue Jays. It would still be F Jeter, which just goes to show the power of LeBron. And he's coming back for $52.3 million next year for a 41-year-old NBA player. Golly, the NBA is where it's at. I used to say, raise your kids to be left-handed pitchers. Raise your kids to be 3-and-D. because that's how you make a ton of money now in sports, as evidenced by the NBA. All right, we got to get out of here because I got to get out of here because I got to go on Mad Dog Sports Radio. So for those of you who have SiriusXM, you can get it on the app. It's channel 82 and very easy to find. Just type in Mad Dog Radio. Super simple. I think that's it. I was just looking to see if there was anything else that was left on the grid.
I'll be doing a hit 5:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio out in Las Vegas with my guy, the Schmo. So that should be fun. So
oh, really?
Out in the Vegas area, maybe catch me. And
I like that. I don't know the Schmo. I've met Steve Cofield before. I don't know if you've been on with him or JVT from VSiN, John Von Tobel. The Von Tobels run Vegas, if you've seen the history of back in the day. All right, y'all, that's it for us. Jay and I'll see you back here right next week for another edition of Gas.